So, public forum. Do we have anybody that wishes to speak?
We have not received any requests to speak.
Okay. So we're going on to budget then. So Chief, you ready to talk about budget? Chief Gabe?
I'm going to defer it all to Gabe.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have, to the best of our ability, finalized the FY 17-18 draft budget. You do have a copy of that budget in your book. There were some small changes from when we met last, as well as we kind of followed some of the direction from the board that we received last month. And my intention today is to go through kind of a high level of some of the items that have been added or changed within that budget. And then at the end of this, we'd ask for tentative adoption from the board. At that point, we will post for the required 20 days and come back at the June meeting, hold a public hearing on budget, and then there'd be the final adoption of the budget. So with that, assuming you guys diligently looked through every page and read every line from the last board meeting, so you guys are well versed in the budget, so we'll be happy to answer any questions. If not, I'll get right into it. All right, perfect. So actually, I just already kind of mentioned where we're at. We're at the presentation for tentative adoption, and then at the June 21st meeting will be a public hearing on budget and final adoption. So overview, as we worked through the budget, we started off with having received the assessed value from the county assessor's office. We did see an increase of 5.48% with Coconino County and 5.40 with Yavapai County. In addition, on our revenue side, we did increase some other revenue items, mainly based on inflationary reasons. Ambulance was adjusted based on our realized collection and the projected rate increase, which hopefully we'll hear back soon on from DHS. And finally, the tax rate, and that'll be based upon which direction the board decides when we get to the end of the meeting here on the contingency fund allocation. From the meeting last month, the board had directed myself and the chief to include the 0.3% COLA for all staff in the budget, which we have done. Since the last meeting, we did get revised, or we did get our quote from our current workers' comp carrier, CopperPoint, and we actually, based on our EMOD, saw a reduction of $118,000. So that was plugged in there, and I know Chief has some he would like to add to that.
So, board, we've been talking about a workers' comp risk pool concept, and part of the design, I know Mr. Soto sat in on one of the meetings at the earlier onset when we were in Laughlin talking about a few of these concepts. One of the things we needed to do is get a critical mass of participants to make the numbers work, and there was not enough people that were able to commit to making the workers' comp pool launch. The item is not dead. It'll be off the table for this year, but we're going to continue to look to see if there's opportunities and needs. But our reduction of $118,000 is really a product of the formula that CopperPoint that we use, or the NCCI and the process that they're governed by through the Department of Insurance, looks at our safety and our work loss ratios. And because we've had some really good years, and the way they go back, and one of the years that came off that was a less favorable year, created a situation where we are realizing a $118,000 decrease in our workers' comp from the previous year. So we'll continue to work with CopperPoint at this time, and we will work diligently to make sure that the questions and concerns we had relative to service and things like that are held to the highest expectation. Where'd Betty go? She lost me. the problem is with, it can go down 118, we can have a bad year come on and we can go up 118,000. So, be that what it is.
Chief, how short were we in participation to get this thing off the ground? Member-wise?
I don't know the number wise. I know that when I let them know that we had such a favorable renewal, that we were likely not going to be join the pool. Even if we didn't get in, there was 2 or 3 other large agencies that without their support, it wouldn't work. Even if all the little ones joined, it wouldn't have mattered. So 20 of the small ones or 3 or 4 of the big ones, it all, some hybrid thereof had to happen, and it wasn't close. A lot of interest, but there were folks that just weren't certain or whatever, so we're going to work at solidifying that in the next year or 2. So like I said, we're shelving the concept, but not scrapping it. It'll still be in play and be able to be brought back out. Yeah, I'm good.
Good?
Yeah, I'm
Good?
good. Yeah,
Okay.
I need Heimlich or something.
All right, thank you, Chief. In addition, I debated leaving this in there, taking it out, because I think we've covered this enough, but just last bullet point on this one for the year, obviously, we did see significant increases in PSPRS expenses, which we will realize. There is, the governor did sign a bill that will change the amortization period from 20 to 30 years. And our understanding from AFTA is there was an emergency clause in there that actually allows an organization to take advantage of that starting July 1 of this coming fiscal year of 2017. We don't know a lot of details about it yet on if PSPRS is even going to be able to get that calculated for us in time. So there may be more to come on that before we do final adoption. I will point out, just from a rule standpoint, when it comes to the budget, once you tentatively adopt it, we cannot increase it, but we can decrease the budget without having to repost and do that. So that's what may come of PSPRS. But right now, obviously, we're going off the assumption of what we've been given in our actuarial report and the numbers that we've been talking about from the beginning. In addition, in the personnel budget, there's been added funding for additional positions. There is a IT tech position in there that we've added an administrative position. There's a CHRMHIP position. Close. And also we realized too some needs on our ambulance billing side and working through the job description and the development there, and have added some more funding for that position. So is there any other positions that we?
Only thing I'll just clarify is that the IT position is in this budget. We just haven't been able to fill it, so that's not it's a position unfilled right now, but just because we can't find the qualified candidate, the 2 positions he spoke to, that would be the fire inspector / CIP member and an administrative kind of, we call it kind of a pinch hitter, kind of helping out, fill some gaps when we have people off, and some things that just aren't getting done in the organization are the 2 that are programmed into this upcoming budget as well. So.
Okay. That's it from the personnel standpoint. From the operational standpoint, there was definitely a little bit more investment in the training side of the house, both for Arbinger training, the patient care reporting training, as well as paramedic and special ops training. We did increase our allocation and funding for fleet maintenance, given the outsourcing now of one of those positions, as well as just based on use needs, CRM supplies, special ops, and EMS supplies budgets have been increased. On the administrative side, we did add costs for the potential bond-related expenditures. Obviously, there was the savings in the finance side with the contracted finance director, which was a great idea. And finally, on liability insurance, right now we have 2 proposals in on our liability insurance coverage. One is our current provider at $97,000, which is what is in the budget that you have today. We have one other bid in that is lower, and another one that we're waiting on getting. As we kind of vet through the options, we'll make a recommendation on which one we should go with. Right now, it's looking like our current provider offers more coverage, and hence why there is currently a greater cost for it. But ultimately, if we don't select the current provider, it'll be at the same cost or lower. Would not be an increase from what we have in this budget today. So with that, you have in your packet, and this is the exact copy of the budget that is in your board book, of a 17-18 budget of $16.994 million, which is based upon a tax rate of $2.54. Currently, you'll see if you look at the bottom line on the capital budget, if this works, no? Oh yeah, there we go. This is our current capital plan, and this is our current assumption of funding, assuming no bond. So until there's actually a decision on the bond, both not only from this board and the voters, we'll continue our official projections on being of the assumption that we will not have that.
To be clear, though, that 1.3 million is not enough to fund the capital needs. We would need to, if we do not get a bond, and assuming we fund everything we talked about, we certainly have opportunities to say, well, we're not doing this or whatever, but to keep the conversation, so you can follow the bouncing ball, that number would have to be at least $2.5 million going forward to fund what we need to do that we've talked about in the bond. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And then the only other thing to point out on this budget is this is with the contingency allocation set at 200,000. After the last meeting, Pam had done some work for us and put together what we have spent historically on contingency, and as you saw, we averaged right around 200,000, even a little less in some years. So both the chief and I feel that 200,000 is a reasonable balance and amount to put in for that contingency allocation. But as the board had requested, the next slide right here, which is not in your board book, is the same budget. The only difference here is we've increased that contingency allocation to 300,000. That does put us at just over 17 million, at 17,094,000, and a tax rate of 256, almost 257. So unless there's any other questions, that is my presentation of the fiscal year 17-18 budget.
So I have a question for the fire chief. So Chief Kazian, then, are you recommending that the contingency be set at $200,000?
I'm comfortable with that. I think we'll that's adequate, and as stated in the findings of the historical, we've utilized some of those contingency funds because they were available, and we could use them for projects that, if needed, could have waited, type of thing. So we had the money, we were able to do some things. I'm comfortable that with the 200,000 and what we've been really doing on a budgeting standpoint from Chief Paichur, myself, and Gabe, and where we're just kind of at, I think we're really honing in a lot of things and getting a handle on what we foresee as the future needs and things like that, and have incorporated them into this budget. So I feel that we're continuing. The only downside to that is if we're talking about bond and a station, and if we don't do a bond or a bond doesn't pass and we need to go forth somewhere else, 300,000 might afford us some opportunities to look at things. But in my opinion, I think 200,000 for truly contingent items, I think that's more than enough, or that is enough.
Okay. Any other discussion on the budget? So where are we in the cycle? We're approval to publish, and then we have, we'll come back in June to
Correct.
adopt.
Correct, Mr. Chair. Tonight we'd ask for the board to tentatively adopt the budget, authorize the staff to publish, and then hold a public hearing on June 21st.
Okay, any further discussion? Go ahead and publish, okay. I'll move to publish the budget as submitted.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll be back in a month to talk about it one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next item, Fire Chief's annual evaluation. Just wanted to put it on the agenda tonight that his evaluation was completed. He had a excellent evaluation and wanted to congratulate him on his 5-year tenure, and thank him for his service and
Thank you.
his continued service.
I appreciate it. It's a pleasure working for you and for the community. So it's a great honor. So thank you.
Consent agenda. We've got several items on the consent agenda. If no one has an item they would like to pull off, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as written.
I move to accept the consent agenda as written.
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Gabe, you're back up again.
I shouldn't have sat down. Thought you guys wanted to talk about stuff on there. All right. So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, you have the April financial report in your packet. You'll see for the month of April, we did have $2.4 million in property tax revenue. Our projected revenue for the month was just over $2.1 million. So again, we are trending ahead both on a monthly and year-to-date basis of our projections. On the non-levy revenue, you'll see that we received $189,000 compared to budgeted of $180,000. Personnel expenses for the month were under budget at $858,000, as well as vehicles and equipment at $50,000. Utilities and communication under budget at $13,870. Managerial expenses were under budget at $59,496, and capital and contingency at $64,500. I will point out again, a lot of these variances that we're seeing on a month-by-month basis is due to kind of some of that methodology in the budgeting in the past. The budget that you have in front of you, we've worked through on more of a 12-month basis instead of an annual basis. So we will smooth out these month-over-month variances kind of going forward for next fiscal year.
David, is that the managerial expenses being so different? Is that just due to the lack of smoothing out or?
Yeah, there's a lot of expenses that occur on the managerial side that fall in there under professional services that are one-time payments. So a lot of those were made earlier in the fiscal year, so now it's just a month over month, we've got greater capacity.
Thank you.
But when you look at it in totality, we actually, overall, the budget's performing very well. But that's some of the reasons why we see that month to month. Year to date, we are, again, this is always good when when I'm saying we're ahead on revenue and under on expenses, but we are trending ahead on revenue. Our total revenue year to date is $13,889,000, which is over budget by $722, but that's predominantly our tax revenue. So I don't see us ending the fiscal year that far ahead of budget on revenues, because most of this is tax revenue. Again, as we look across our other expense items, you can see that all the other expense items are continuing to trend under budget. Payroll is slightly under budget, and that's really essentially we're looking at about a pay period there, and that's more due to timing on the payroll expenses. But the other areas are performing very well in comparison to budget when we do look at year to date. As you can see from the consent agenda that you just approved, we are starting to wrap up our year-end purchasing. So everybody's trying to get that last minute stuff in. But with that, we are currently $1.4 million under budget on expenses year to date. The only other thing I want to add, well, we've got our percentage of expenses again with personnel being the highest, but I really want to close today with, you can see from our year-over-year cash position, we ended the month at 6.9 million compared to 5.4 million last year. So that's about a $1.5 million increase in overall fund balance year over year. And so as we continue to work towards some of those goals that we've mentioned in the past, and as I project out, based on our projections, I see us continuing that trend through the end of the fiscal year, which will allow us to not only put some money into that capital fund and help start that capital fund a little stronger than when originally anticipated, but also allocate some more of that money to kind of financial reserves. So while I believe the $200,000 is more than adequate contingency, I know the chief has some uneasiness at times because he's used to 400,000. But realizing we will have that money available in the general fund as far as a contingency reserve balance, that if the unforeseeable were to occur, the district has the obligation or has the ability to draw on other funds to take care of it, something that may occur. So unless there's any other questions, that concludes the April financial report.
Okay, any discussion? Motion to approve?
I move to approve the April 2017 financial report.
Second?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you.
and that takes us to you, Chief.
Okay, board chief's report, you can clearly see the analysis of the numbers, where we're trending. We're about 90 calls, looks like, behind last year. So pretty standard stuff. I think it's tracking where it's tracking. You can see the times of response and things like that all line up there. And I guess cumulatively, as Ms. Cooperman always looks at there a little bit, we're trending definitely much better in the response time by
It's
32
really-
seconds.
I'm just, I got to see it when reviewing the packet, and I wasn't here last month, but the trend line looks extremely good to be hovering at that 6-minute mark for response time.
Yeah.
Looks excellent, and I know that our citizens of our community appreciate seeing that.
Rescues, we continue to have our standard hike out rescues that we do. We did 10 in the month of April. And 8 last year at the same time period, but pretty close to the same. Grants, we got some grants out that are pending, and we should start hearing something sooner than later, I would think, on these grants. They're awarding them to people, so I always say the longer it takes to hear no, the better. The odds get better, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have any better odds at this point. So we're waiting to hear. Just remind folks, one of those is a $300,000 Type 3 apparatus, which is in the capital plan up there. And if we were to fund it back to what the committee is recommending us to do to continue to do grant funding, we're doing that now, and we'll continue to do that in the future. And if we're fortunate enough to get that would be another relief in the financial picture, which would be beneficial to the tax levy and to the taxpayer. So. Let's see here, just a little bit going forward here. Community risk management, I'll turn it over to our good fire marshal here and see if he's got anything like to add for risk management. We just got done with some car seat training and some other good stuff, but you got a couple bar graphs here talking about your activities that you want to report on?
Yeah, we've been holding pretty steady for the last couple of months on plans reviews. That has increased dramatically over the last couple of weeks. I expect our plans reviews to increase. We did about 185 inspections last month, if I remember correctly. And Carla and I went to car seat training. It's, believe it or not, a 4-day class on how to correctly install car seats. And I thought, what are we going to learn in 4 days? There was enough material there for 4 days. I had my doubts going in. Rick got done with his Arson 2 class, so a lot of training going on, and we've just been busy, and things are looking like it's going to be another busy month this month.
On the permitting thing, I was at a meeting the other day with some city folks. I think I heard them say that they have more permits thus to year to date this year than all of last year already, something like that. So it's a lot happening out there.
Is it building or what kind of permits? All
The building permits and stuff, yeah. We didn't go into too much detail, but that is the building department. So what kind of permits or what, I don't know. But the training information here, just talking about training, we continue to provide lots of training. You saw our 3 new folks here. Well, they started in the month of May. This is for the April. We've been really busy getting those folks up and trained in their 3-week academy or prepping for that. So thanks to Training Officer Duran and Division Chief Mazulis for getting that going. Some TRT training has been happening as well. So lots of good stuff happening there. Wildland preparedness is obviously the time of the year for that. incident safety officer class that was held down in the Verde Valley area. So some good stuff there, and we just continue to have a high expectation in the training realm. So with that is our training. I know Betty has been taking some HR classes, and Keona's been taking a lot of classes. We've really been working on Keona and getting some of her training in as well, which isn't always identified in the, this is more of a line operation, folks. Sometimes we let a few things slip in there from admin, but admin's doing a lot of training as well to get up to speed and take care of stuff. A very nice thank you letter from one of our residents. And with that, that is my formal report. Let me just see if I had any other items on this piece here. So workers' compensation pool, as I mentioned, will come off the agenda and not be talked about again at this point until further notice. The special recognition for the 60th anniversary and picnic, which is being held on May 20th, this Saturday from 11 to 3 at Los Lagos.
Yes, Rancho Los Lagos, Upper Red Rock Loop. You'll find it if you drive along there. It's gonna be beautiful. It's gonna be wonderful.
So we got 150-ish
50-ish.
people. We had a limit of about 200 anyway, so that's where we'd like to see a few more. If you can make it, come by for a little bit. But we've got the range of our people have served in the community in the past. So we have quite a variance of folks, or is it?
We do a number of retirees and those in major positions with us. And we've got families coming, so it's gonna be a really fun event for everybody.
If you happen to follow us on Facebook for the month of April and then through this week up to the actual event, we've been posting kind of flashback pictures of what has happened in the district over the last 60 years. And so there's been some pretty neat old photos and some reminders of the neat stuff that we do on a more current basis. If you look up the hashtag SFD proudly serving 60 years, you'll see all the pictures just by searching that hashtag on Facebook if you're so digitally connected. Good stuff there. Cottonwood Public Safety Communications Center. Jeff, anything you want to say on that at all that, relating to that? I don't know if there's anything to report. Cruising along, doing well. Other than that, that is my report as I know it today. The new recruits are doing well. We've got our folks that are going through the process. They have a 3-week orientation, and then they'll be cut loose and put on shift starting Saturday, I would guess.
Yeah, there's staggered
Yeah.
start. Did you talk about engineering testing?
Oh, sure. And yeah, you want to talk about that? We just got done with engineer testing. We had 11 candidates go through the engineering process and ended up 11 passed, and they're on the list for engineer. That was pretty exciting. Jeff and I are spending the next few days going over and giving them the kind of feedback and the growing opportunity to learn from what went well and what they can improve upon. And it's well received from our membership, and that's good stuff. So that's that. And anything else in the HR world that we got going? Open enrollment for our folks, and just there's not a dull moment around here, I would say. And Chris has attested to that. So we're keeping them busy, and that's good. So with that is my chief's report, short and sweet.
Chief, I have one question for you.
Sure.
Is there any correlation between those grants that you apply for and being approved by a bond by the voters? In other words, if we've just received a bond for all this money, would we expect not to be approved for a grant because of that?
Well, the grant would be approved before the bond would go to the election.
Or even in the future?
In the future, we certainly would have to look at the financial parameters for each and every grant request to see if we meet the financial parameters that may be around that. So the answer is yes and no. So it depends. So it could be if you had a grant and availability for that much money, they may say, you don't have a financial need. However, I will say that the grants through the Assistance for Firefighter, AFG firefighter grant, I've seen some places get some pretty interesting approved grants that I don't know that I don't know if they had the funding need that I was shocked that they needed something like that. So I don't know the computer program tallies them all and rates them all, and there's a process, and then individual reviewers review them after they get through the first gauntlet and things like that. So unless it's prohibitive for us to take the time to do it, we will continue to take the time to do it if we meet what looks to be the parameters for application.
Thank you.
I think that made sense.
Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Okay. So, Cottonwood IGA.
So, board, I'd like to pull this right now. I got a phone call today from a couple of our partner agencies that had some questions regarding from their board or their concerns. I think we're okay with the terms. The legals looked it over, but instead of us having one IGA and them end up negotiating a different one or having to approve another IGA if Cottonwood wants all one of the same, I don't think there's any substantive changes, but we'll be back next month with this approval. It does include a 5% increase to the rate, and it's all included in the budget that you so nicely proposed be published. So there's nothing that will be of a surprise or anything. It'll be more technical terms.
And a 5% increase the following year as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And that's one of the crux of what we're talking about is
We kind of expected that.
yeah.
Well, I remember when we thought they were kind of lowballing their rates originally based on what we were paying for dispatch services. So I'm not surprised.
Our
that
cost of
it's-
operation, well, it was modeled differently, increased greater than 5% a year. So, I mean, but that is one of the sticking points is just straight across the board calling it 5%. Some folks would like to at least have a negotiation point, and that's what we'll probably end up, at least, we'll see what they end up dealing with between the two attorneys. I bet we'll be close to 5% every year. But yeah, that's a pretty good assumption.
Okay. All right, so we'll bring that back in June.
Yes,
Okay, and last item is the weight room issue.
I will turn this over to Assistant Chief Pichura to talk about.
Over the past 6 months, 8 months, we've been working with some floor failures in the weight room at Station 4. It's gotten soft. And when you look at the hard cap, the ceiling, if you will, underneath there, you can see the nails popping, the paint from the vibration and impacts on the floor from the weight room. It's dynamic load, it's exercise, it's not dropping the weights, doing those sorts of things. It's just impact to a floor that wasn't designed to have those sorts of activities on it. OSHA had looked at this about 2 years ago and told us to move the weight floor downstairs. We did some minimalist improvements by putting some shock pad down on the floor, but we didn't move it. So we've gotten to a point where, since we're having some floor fracturing, we need to get it off the floor, off the second floor down to the concrete base. So staff and the station crews have looked at it. Ideally, we'd like to go through a light remodel, moving it directly below, which would require taking out some walls, moving some plumbing and electrical, and putting in some support base underneath the second floor in that 3 offices there. Or there's 2 offices and the cardio / laundry room. So we're going to straighten that out under this proposal. And then in the old dispatch center, there's popcorn ceiling that has a minute but reportable form of asbestos in the ceiling products. We want to encapsulate that with drywall, seal it, and then also paint and condition the other 2 offices in there for the captains to move upstairs. They're losing their office downstairs. The battalion chiefs to move upstairs. And then creating a nice training room for the folks up there until we decide what the fate of the structure. It's been a deferred maintenance piece for a while. It is an OSHA violation and concern. One of the options we have for a lower cost piece is to move our UTVs, our over the road lightweight vehicles, out of a bay that was once used for the battalion chief's ride. Move them outside under we'd have to acquire a cover to put them out into the elements, strip out the lockers that are in that room, and then make that the weight exercise room. And I guess it used to be there at one time years ago. So, and then the office space, we'd have to do some other things to it. Ideally, what we're proposing is the best fix. The tiered approach would be, let's go minimalist again, but get the weight off the second floor down to that bay. The challenge is we just purchased one of those UTVs last year. It's in superb shape because we can house it and keep it in out of the elements. And you put it under a lean-to, it's going to get exposed, which means it degrades, and we have to start tending to that a little bit more so than in potentially replacing it because of conditions outside sooner than later.
You know, I looked at the price tag of 37,000 for, and my concern in reading it was that, that we're gonna tear down the building in about a year, likely.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, but also likely because it's such a high priority. So it was hard to think about spending 38,000. And it's good to hear that other option, of moving it down. Are you saying moving it into, after you move the UTVs out, moving the equipment into a bay? Is it a bay?
It's a side bay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And would there be a place elsewhere for the UTV so it wouldn't face that degradation?
Where-
Like, I don't mean at Station 4.
Well, Station 4 utilizes the UTV for response up on the Schnebly and other trail systems on a regular basis, so we still need a UTV at that station.
There probably is, I mean, I don't know how much work we've done to find, you know, the options for the lean-to or one of those plastic kind of shed buildings, what the code would be about storing a, you know, gas appliance, and, you know, whatever. You know, I don't know how much work we've done, Jeff, if we have.
It would just be an exposed cover, that's all it is. So 4 legs and mounted into the asphalt concrete, and just to keep the sun off of it
Yeah.
and weather.
I'm just thinking
vertical weather.
they make those plastic Rubbermaid type, whatever.
There's,
You know, I'm just saying, so there may be a very small, or not small, there may be an option to enclose it a little bit better than a lean-to, like, I don't know, but maybe not, I don't know if they would fit the unit or not, I don't know, I haven't done that research. But in my head, I've walked by Costco and seen some fairly large looking, garden-like looking structure that may work for us, but that takes up a parking spot, that parking's already at a premium, you know, those type of things, and so there's a give and take in this piece.
Chief, isn't, to the rear of the station, isn't there like an overhead patio area in there, concrete slab already there?
Yes.
And about what size is that, roughly?
Oh,
About a 15 by 20?
he laid the concrete.
Roughly.
Right, but it does have an overhang, right? So even as an option, would it not be cheaper even to frame that in to create, number one, either a new workout room or to put those apparatus there and then remodel that existing side bay, as you spoke of, as the weight room? I mean, there's a space, and I don't know what the current patio is, if it's actually used or not, but
Yeah,
the
it's
footprint
used.
is there.
Yeah, it's used for outdoor dining and barbecuing right now. There is a block wall that separates that grassy area between the pad and the parking area. That could be knocked down and paved through, or aggregate.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see a few more options available to us, knowing that we're hopefully in the next year or so going to be demoing that building, rather than to remodel and invest money into it and create office space in the other building. And it seems like we're kind of, I won't say, I hate to use the term throwing money away, but I think there's other options we could have other than doing this. Although I do see the need for getting that weight off the floor.
Yeah, so in reference to, you know, a remodel on the back side of it, it's not designed for interior housing, so we'd have to take that to the city to get it reviewed for code and the whole bit, so. We were hoping to utilize some of the facility dollars left over this fiscal to accomplish the task, and we've been waiting for contractors to give us bids for the last 5 months. Work is aplenty out there, and this one is a low priority for them. We had 2 contractors come in and look at it, and they were looking at the building saying, are you sure you want to do this? And they said, yeah, it can be done, after they started poking it in there and saying we could do this and this, but that's about as much as you can do. Going outside again, yeah, I don't know.
I think your points in here make the point. If we found asbestos, we got structural problems, we got, you know. Station 4, in my opinion, is probably number 1 on our priority list. That's obviously it's everybody's decision, but from what I've seen and being in that building, that's the one that I think's got to be fixed first. So I guess I'm in agreement. If the bond goes through, it's going to get fixed. If the bond doesn't go through, it's going to have to get fixed, whether it's whichever of the other options we were talking about. But I don't think it's an option anymore. It's not going to be something you can wait 3 more years. We're going to have to come to some kind of an agreement of how to do it. But I agree with Dave. I don't want to call it throwing out money, but if we know our intention is within 12 months that we're going to somehow be breaking ground on a new building, I think we got to come up with a temporary stopgap to solve that problem.
So, board, just, and I completely understand what you're saying, and those are the struggles we've had as staff to talk about where we are, where we're not, you know, with this specific project. If the bond gets recommended for approval by you, we go to the public and they vote in favor of bond, the earliest we'd be at the table trying to sell bonds would be like April, late March, early April, like the earliest. That doesn't mean that we couldn't be doing some legwork, but we're, you know, we don't know where we're at in that process until November 7th, I think is the election date. If the bond was not to pass, we would be finding that out in November. We'd be starting the budget preparation for the following year. I mean, so we'd be, can we get it done that next year? Yeah, we can definitely probably get it done, but it wouldn't be like, you know, it's going to take a little while to get the CMAR process up and running and doing those things. In either
Still
case.
talking the difference between 12 and 18 months. I'm still
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I mean, I'm not,
investment of $40-some thousand or whatever.
I'm not advocating one without, to make sure that it's not going to happen in, you know, like November 8th. We'll have a bulldozer there and knocking that place down if it passes, nor will we be, if it doesn't pass, that's going to create a very lengthy conversation about how we're going to fund and prioritize all of those $26 million up there and what that looks like and doesn't look like. And we'll be spending a lot of time with Gabe to figure those things out. So we want to make sure we proceed correctly. Fully agree that Station 4. Station 5 is a high priority only in the fact that we're looking at the you know, working in tandem with them and trying to get that locked up as well. So those are kind of dual tracking, and which one hits the, you know, the tarmac first, or if we combine those two projects may have a lot of value. You know, if you look at those two projects, you're at, you know, almost $8 million, maybe even more than that. Actually, I'm thinking about it. It was like 5 and 2.6 or something like that. So you're looking at, yeah, I think like $8 million, I guess, plus the 15% and everything else rolled up. You know, if you're saving 8% on that number, if you did those together, that's a pretty healthy savings. Now, the logistics of doing a combined project with a state, if they're going to be the lead entity, you know, there's a lot of questions of how we do that stuff. So anyway, all that being what it is, we're having those same dialogues. We want to make sure the folks are safe in that station. The alternatives that Jeff spoke to are certainly options that we have, and whether we need to come back with some other alternative solutions and pricing. I certainly appreciate your pause at the request, but no, we're also concerned about the station, its condition, and finding a alternate solution for the functioning of the building. Because if it may be longer, we may get there'll be 2 years down the road before we actually find a bulldozer on site. That's not super unlikely. You know, 18 months might be realistic and a good goal, but it could be 2 years. And at that point, maybe then it's like, well, that money.
Well, I still believe there's a less expensive alternative somehow to manage this problem.
Chief, I have a question. I noticed in the report that it indicates that this problem was identified several years ago, and I'm just curious as to why this never made it into a budget request. And so basically it's an unbudgeted item, and I don't question the need to address the problem, but I'm just wondering why it took this long to deal with it and why it wasn't part of a regular budget approval.
Well, I'm going to turn this over to Chief Paichura and see if he's got an answer for that, because he's been kind of leading this project, and I'm fairly new to the game as being. I mean, we've talked about it. You can be in that station and in a meeting at the battalion chief's office, and when they're working out, you get very nervous that that it's very loud and that something might fall through the floor.
Well, I don't question the need at
Right,
all.
I was saying, but so,
Yeah.
so that's my extent of knowing that there was a problem or a question, or a concern rather. Where we're at today, as Jeff said, we've been months trying to get contractors, but it's beyond that point. And I don't know, Jeff, if you've got an answer as to how we took this long to get to where we are today
Chief
versus.
Chair, I don't know if you heard, but the
I did.
report indicated, okay.
And then I've been sidebarring, multitasking is. So I don't know what I don't know relative to pre-Jeff rolling in, but story goes, a lot of other priorities have been hitting the budget piece on facilities for a number of years, trying to catch up on some really critical stuff. This is a critical piece. It's a compliance piece, but it just, Ford wasn't going through, so there wasn't urgency, if you will, of saying we had to replace it. We were just told to get it off it, but we can't see the hazard right now. Well, it's starting to happen, and now we see the hazard, and that's why we're deferring other maintenance items to get this moving through. Now, in discussion with my peers next to me, we're working on alternatives similar to Board Member Soto's ideas. What I'd like to ask for is authorization for staff, Chief, if you don't mind,
Please.
to spend up to $15,000 out of current year fiscal to engage a few contractors for upstairs work, demolition of a wall potentially, and acquisition of a small storage building to relocate the weight room into the bay, the site.
And board, if you, so in facilities, there's lots of unknowns that we have, and so we prioritize projects throughout the year. We certainly work for the lowest cost and, you know, and creating those efficiencies. So, while we're reallocating some of the other projects, you know, to find this money, it's not that we've just got this excess money sitting around that, you know, we can just do a project for 15,000 or 37,000. It's just a matter of shifting priorities and something else that's not getting done that's on the list to do. And I don't know what that is exactly, but Battalion Chief Lakowski takes care of facilities, and he's the one that's kind of said, well, okay, well, this, and this go on the back burner, and we'll budget that into next year's budget. And some of that is in a contingency style, you know, it's in the facilities maintenance, but it's, you know, we don't know how much this, you know, painting's gonna be until we go out and get a quote. We've got some ballpark figures, we get some initial quotes or whatever it is, but till we actually get those things in there, sometimes we find cost savings by projects coming in cheaper than what we thought they were gonna be, things like that. So, but we've been very aggressively taking care of quite a few facility needs, pretty telltale to the same stuff we just got done talking about as it relates to stations and bonding and infrastructure that's falling around its self. You know, seal coating driveways. You know, last year we did a big push to seal coat driveways. A little less important, I guess, if you look at the floor falling in. But last year when we seal coated driveways this time last year and got a bunch of them done because they needed it, hadn't been done in 10 years, and you're not supposed to wait 10 years to seal coat stuff. That was a high priority at that moment. But this, again, the ceiling wasn't falling in at that point. I mean, we had to note that, yeah, we should get something going. It didn't become a high priority. The asphalt guy coming through saying, if you don't take care of this now, in 12 months, you're gonna be replacing this whole driveway, and that's gonna be, you know, 5 times the price or whatever those numbers were. That became a high priority for us based upon what we know at that moment. And trying to get everything back in line and in a system. You know, Gary did a great job trying to get us there. Buzz is doing a great job trying to get us there. There's just, you know, contractors taking 5 months to get us information back. That's not uncommon. That's a regular occurrence.
Your $15,000 estimate, are you able to include the asbestos abatement in that?
We think we can encapsulate with a contractor putting it up, sealing it, painting it, and just not having to do any fine
I
texture.
had a question about that
Yes.
asbestos, because I've had to deal with that in a personal home. And I was told at that time, and I just want to find out if this has been, if this is true, that if you don't mess with it, if you don't touch it, you don't have asbestos coming into your lungs. Is that false information?
It is true information.
Uh-huh. So why would we need to cover it then? Why would we need to do anything with it? Why not just not mess with it?
It's mostly due to the individual psyche, knowing that there's asbestos above them.
I see.
Even though we've told them don't disturb it,
Yes,
there's a sense in the workforce, and this is everywhere, that if there's asbestos hanging over me, therefore I'm at risk of being potentially,
but we're all
Exposed to.
educable. We all believe in facts, right? So can't facts be backed up with science and not mess with I'm just seeing a way to keep that expense down.
and I understand completely, but alternative facts tend to weigh out more so than regular facts. Just saying.
Chief, what are the other items that we're kind of pushing to the back burner in order to bring this forward? If you know of any that come to mind.
I do not. Chief Lukowski has that, and he says it's doable, and he's got some projects that are non-critical being deferred to the first part of the fiscal year. And then if we go with 15,000, that frees up some other dollars for him to tackle these other pieces that he has in deferment.
I can tell you that we have a tuck pointing issue in many of the stations. We've got a painting issue at this station we've been trying to figure out and get taken care of. We've got something else just slipped my mind. There's a couple, I know, that projects we've been really looking at that haven't been able to get passed, and so I know those were on the short list of things to get done. So those are the type of things that we're talking about moving and reprioritizing.
So for the 15, then we would be removing the weights from their current location and repairing whatever damage is done up there. Down below, you mentioned we would be doing a wall removal. Is that what you said?
It's a block side yard wall.
Okay, sidewall. And then a shed to put the vehicles into and then create the weight room out of the now open shed. Is that correct?
We hope so. Just understand the think tank will be engaged, and the think tank includes 12 or 15 other people, 18 other people, that will come up with some alternates, but we'll get whatever's going to be accomplished within that $15,000 budget line.
Well, so normally I'd say, no, I'd like to see a little better proposal on this. However, I think we have an urgency to this issue that needs to be addressed immediately. I don't like when you say we're out of compliance with OSHA. That makes me nervous. I don't like when you say the floor is collapsing. That makes me, so let's go ahead and fix the problem. If you say we can do it for 15,000, that's better than 47,000.
37.
37,000.
47.
better.
So, and we need to be in Band-Aid mentality, which I know we already are in that building, but we need to stay there because I'm confident that we are going to address that one way or another within the next.
Correct. And board, so the questions I've had with staff as well as, at that point, are we abandoning that whole weight room and just, caution taping it? It's off limits, and we need to, put a kicker in to support the floor so it doesn't go any further, and that's all it is. But, then there's a laundry room that's right below it that, we still have to access the laundry room, so that we got to move the laundry room, and so it's a matter of
Leave it to the think tank.
how do we, well, they'll fix it many different ways, and they're all good.
Well, I support what you're saying, Ty, and I think that I want to thank you for having that sidebar and bringing that figure down to far more acceptable range.
So, yeah,
You're welcome.
tell those, we'll make a motion on that, but I don't want the firefighters at Station 4 to think that we're neglecting their issues. We understand, and that is high on our priority. We want to fix it. We want to fix it correctly, though, and throwing money into something we know we're going to tear down and rebuild. That's hard for the board to stomach.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we have a sidebar for a sec?
Sure.
Board, the attorney would like to speak.
Yeah. The agenda item's kind of specific, and you have to decide what to do about that. It asks for a motion to approve a particular purchase order 10173. particular purchase orders for $37,000. There's no leeway in this particular agenda item to do anything but approve that purchase order. There's ways of handling it. One would be by emergency. The other is to do something here and come back and ratify it, but technically, this agenda item's a little bit tight for moving in another direction.
In my opinion, it would qualify, we can add an emergency item on agenda and come back and ratify it next month.
Well, you can, if you do an emergency item, you need to post something within 24 hours indicating why you did it, which means you have to declare in the record tonight why it's an emergency. And maybe you can do that. I'm sensing maybe there is some critical stuff going on here, but I just want you to be aware that this particular agenda item's a little bit tight. You know, the law says you can take action on an agenda item and items reasonably related thereto. So you may want to take a position that what you're about to do is reasonably related to that, and sometimes it is. This particular purchase order is really specific, and you may trip on that. It might be safer to do a declaration of an emergency, but that means something has to be posted by tomorrow to clean it all up.
I'm more comfortable with that, and because of what we've just discussed with the nature of this problem, I do agree, it can't wait 30 days for us to come back for another meeting. So I think most
Then make your
recommend.
recommendation.
May I ask a quick question? If we deny this item or not approve it, is $15,000 within the purview of the fire chief to spend without authorization? Can't do it.
Nor the board. Right now, the spending limit for me is 5,000. It's under 10,000 for the board, and Gabe would like to speak.
As soon as we get through this board, we'll be working on new financial policies.
And with that, I mean, the best practice is that the numbers we have are definitely more stringent. You would speak to that?
Yeah, just real quick is from a typical fire district of this size standpoint, most fire chief spending authority is in excess of $50,000. Obviously for budgeted items, so in some cases something like this may fall out of that. But also there's the authority to spend within their budgets of, for repairs and maintenance of facilities, and something like this could qualify under that. So again, as we get through the bond process and move through the budget process, we'll begin working on the financial policies, and you guys can then ponder thresholds and things within there. But
If I could just add one more thing, that the committee, the Citizen Advisory Committee, also, one of the recommendations was about looking at your fiscal policies and things like that as well, as it related to capital improvement plan and funding and things like that as well, to help create some sustainability. So wherever the current day spending allowances are in modern day fire districts, that's a discussion we can have at a later date, but definitely. And to Mr. Whittington's point, the reasonably related to, is that the word you used? Man, I'm almost a lawyer. The item is to make a repair at the station. I get the pigeonhole of it's a purchase order, number this to this vendor to repair station 4.
No,
yeah.
we're fine to,
So-
I'm fine with making this an emergency. So I'll add an emergency item to the agenda tonight, to address the, floor at Station 4 weight room. And the motion would be that, we authorize $15,000, not to exceed $15,000 for the repair and movement of the weight room, and housing of the UTV. And the reason for the emergency motion is due to the fact that they are not in OSHA compliance and that there's a danger to staff to be utilizing that room the way it currently sits. And then, so that's my motion. Is there a second?
I second
Second.
that.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And then we'll put that on the agenda for June to ratify.
we need to shoot this one down,
though. But they have access to the money now.
Oh, yeah.
Do we need to take action on this item?
We need to vote this one down, though, right?
No, you can ignore this if you wish. It's okay to vote it down, but it doesn't matter, as long as there's no action taken, there's no action taken.
You could pull it from the agenda.
You could.
And that's, I think it's fine, it just dies on the floor. We've addressed the issue another way.
Mhm.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for being flexible.
I don't know, they voted on emergency action. I'm not sure, did that include?
You got the vote on that?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
We're good.
All right.
John, we're trying to be done by 6.
Thank you. And I know I've harped on this a lot lately, but it is approaching wildfire season. This weekend is our cleanup uptown, where people can clean up around their house. Due to a lot of people's hard work, we are going to be handing these out. I believe we have 140 copies of these. This card has our logo on it. It says, "Is your home fire wise?" It's got a thumb drive attached to it, and the thumb drive contains the video that was done with grant monies. Is that correct? And also some other publications. People can take this home, plug it into their computer, watch the video, get some other publications. It also refers them to the firewise.org website or back to us with our phone number where they can call and get more information. But the cleanup is going on this weekend, so if you or somebody that you know has some brush cleanup they're doing around their house, tell them to get it up there and dump it.
So brush cleanup, no cactus. The times are Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
8 to 5. And to be clear, the funding of those USB, the video that's on it, that was all done through grant funding from the Arizona Community Foundation post Slide Fire. It also paid for the wildfire sign at station number 6. If you'd like me to relive the discussions on the wildfire
I'd like to talk
danger
about that some
sign,
more.
we can definitely do it. I was planning on being out here by 6, and it is 6 o'clock, sir, so
I think Smokey's a little small.
a little small. A motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you. And we're adjourned. Thank you.